Okay, so hello there, my friends. How we doing today? Hope everybody's doing well out there. So, this is what I figure is going to be the first in a series where I talk a little bit about superhero comic books. And I figure what better way to start than at the very beginning of superhero comic books. Let's talk about Superman. And let's specifically talk about the beginning of Superman, which would have been Action Comics #1. Now, Action Comics #1 has a pretty simple story in it. It's just a really short story about Superman, and it ends on a cliffhanger. And it wasn't originally intended to be a comic book story, it was intended to be a comic strip in a newspaper. So they have several comic strips that they splice together into a comic book story. And that's why it has kind of a disjointed, episodic kind of feel to it. Where, you have Superman stopping an execution, and then Superman changes into Clark Kent, and then he stops a domestic violence episode, and then he goes on a date with Lois Lane and confronts some mobsters, and then he's going after corrupt lobbyists, and it's all over the place. And that's kind of what I like about that story, is it just kind of does all these different things with the characters. It's almost like a pilot showing all the different things Superman could be doing. And one of the things I like about the story, another one of the things I like, is that it pretty much establishes most of the important stuff about Superman right off the bat. Now, not everything, obviously. You can only fit so much into so many pages, and a lot of stuff they would come up with later. But all the basic stuff is there. All the really important stuff is there. For one thing, Superman is a strange visitor from an alien planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men. This is established in the first 3 panels. It's interesting because Jor-El isn't named at all. He's just kind of referred to as a scientist. And in fact, he's not seen at all. We just see the shot of Superman's rocket blasting off from Krypton. And then we're told that a motorist found the child when it landed on Earth and took him to an orphanage. So that's the only mention we get of the Kents, who are not even named. We don't know how Clark Kent got the name Clark Kent, if we're just going by that first story. It's not established. It's not even established that they came back and adopted him. It's just established that a motorist found the infant child and took him to an orphanage. So, are we to assume that Superman was raised at the orphanage? I don't even know if they figured this out yet. I would assume they had, because there was an earlier version of the Superman comic strip that was illustrated by a different artist. It wasn't drawn by Schuster. But it was still written by Siegel. The artist, what was his name? Keaton, I think. That one definitely had the Kents in it. That one also had the idea, rather than Superman being from an alien planet, he would have come from Earth's future and been sent back in time. So you see, there were a lot of different ideas before Superman was finalized as to what Superman might be. There was also a lost comic book of Superman that doesn't exist anymore because when it got rejected by the publishers, apparently Joe Shuster was so just... what's the word? He was just so disillusioned by this whole thing, he apparently destroyed all the pages. So that one's lost to time. All that survives is the cover. Apparently Jerry Siegel was able to save it. Anyway, the next thing about Superman that's established in this story, that's one of the most important things about Superman, is the Clark Kent identity. Who disguised as Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper, fights the never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way. We all know that. Basically everything that you would have in the opening credits of that George Reeves television series, it's already established in this story. And the third important thing that's established in Action Comics #1 is Lois Lane, and Clark Kent's relationship with Lois Lane, and Superman's relationship with Lois Lane, which are 2 completely different things, because obviously in the first story, Lois doesn't know that Clark is Superman. And she treats Superman with, she treats Clark with I think loathing is probably a strong term, but she certainly treats him with, like, a bit of contempt. And, it's established in there that he's asked her out quite a number of times, and she said no each time. And basically, at this point, she's just kind of throwing him a bone. Like, she's going out with him just basically to get him off of her back or whatever. And, but when she meets Superman, it's a completely different thing, and she's kind of smitten almost from the very beginning. It's a great panel where you have Superman and Lois meeting for the first time, and it's really well drawn. Like, Shuster is a very simple and very cartoonish sort of artist, but I really like his artwork because it's very expressive of emotion and action. And but in the panel, Superman's kind of leaning forward towards her, and she's kind of shrinking back a little bit. And I think that the body language of it is really good. And the first thing Superman ever says to Lois Lane is, "You needn't be afraid of me. I won't harm you." And the expression on his face is kind of like warm and reassuring. And it's a nice bit. It's a really nice bit. There's been all kinds of different versions of how Superman would have first met Lois Lane. Of course, in the Christopher Reeve movie, there's a whole "you got me, who's got you" thing, and that's nice. But I kind of feel like that first panel in Action Comics #1, that's one where, like, they nailed it from the first. That's to me, like, the perfect version of how Superman ought to meet Lois Lane. It's really nice. So yeah, and I don't think Lois Lane is fully named in the story. I don't think she's called Lois Lane. I think she's just called Lois. So that's kind of interesting. So, but yeah, Superman is probably the greatest of all superheroes. I would say the only real rivals for him in that regard are, Wonder Woman and Captain America. But, Superman is kind of like the thing that epitomizes what a superhero ought to be. But that's where it all started. That's where everything started. If you're into superheroes at all, this is where it began. And I don't care if your favorite superhero is the Punisher. I don't care if your favorite superhero is Spawn. They wouldn't have existed if not for this one little story in Action Comics #1 that nobody at the time really believed in, and they kind of just, put it in there because they needed some content for this new comic book magazine, and it flew off the shelves, and people fell in love with it, and it became a phenomenon. And he's like a legendary character to this day. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the beginnings of Superman, and as humble beginnings as they were, something great sprang from it. Anyway, like I said, I'm looking to do a series of these. I'm not sure how often I'm going to put them out. My next episode is going to be about Mr. Fantastic. So maybe I'll do it tomorrow, maybe I'll do it next week, I don't know. We'll just see. I kind of want to put these out on, like, some kind of regular schedule where I'll just have, like, a little superhero topic that I talk about. So, anyway, that's pretty much it for now. We'll talk to you later. Bye.